The single most important part of running any diet is knowing how much to eat. So how many calories. Your macros, micros, anything after that, it's secondary. You need to know how many calories you need to be on, or your goal will not be achieved if you want to bulk a little bit, or if you want to cut, or if you want to maintain. If you don't know where to set yourself, it's not going to work. Now, there are two different ways to track this. One is very crude, and it takes a little bit longer. You will get there eventually, and it doesn't take much attention in terms of recording data, but it'll give you a crude result. The second way, the way that I prefer, the way that I do it, it'll take about 2 weeks of focusing on something and being diligent. But if you put in the work, you will be rewarded. I'll cover the crude way first, and then I'll go into detail in the second way. I won't go into any kind of details in the crude way, because I'll cover it all in the second one anyway, in terms of figuring out the iterations of it, so you can figure that out there. Now, before I start even the crude way, the second way is dependent on recording what you eat. And I've put together a whole video on how to do that, how you can figure out what you can trust, whether you can use an app like MyFitnessPal. You can't. I mean, you can. If you eat like the exact same thing every day and then you only use that, then yeah, sure. I go into details about why these apps are quite misleading for more basic things than you would expect. But if you only have that as a crude tool, it's passable. It'll work. I go into those details, of course, in this video, so I won't bother you with that in this one. Now, the crude way is quite simple. Take your body weight, lean, not if you're 100 pounds overweight, get rid of the 100 pounds for this maths, multiply by 12 to 15, depending on how active you are, and that'll be your starting point. So eat that for 2 weeks straight and see what your weight does. Weigh yourself every morning, of course, after you've gone to the loo, etc. And if your weight goes down, then you're obviously in a deficit. If your weight's going up, you're in a surplus, and if it stays the same, you're maintaining at those calories. Adjust by 10% each time, and then figure out where you are based on that. It occurred to me as I was editing this that there's a really big disadvantage to the crude way that I forgot to mention, which is that you have to eat the exact same thing every single day to know how many calories you're on. Because otherwise, you're tracking your calories. And if you're doing that, you might as well do the more detailed, complicated, precise way. So I'll just drop this in here, on with the video. For the precise way of doing things, the more time you have, with the more consistency, the better this will be, the more accurate it'll be. So here, what you're looking at, it seems daunting at first, but all we really care about is this little column here, which is calories, and then here, this one here with weight. Everything else that we'll be using can be derived from these. So for example, a 3-day average, 5-day average, whatever you want to do. Don't worry about those things. Again, all of this stuff, I explain how to do this in the tracking video. But now that we've got this data, let's see what we can do with it. So here I've got some graphs of that whole time period. And what I'm looking for is somewhere where I've eaten something relatively consistent. So this spike here at Christmas where I had 8,000 calories in 2 days, really not a good idea to do this maths over that. So I see here from about day 18 to, let's just pick a random point there. I'm eating kind of the same stuff, and the carbs, kind of the reason I'm picking carbs here is because the more carbs you eat, the more glycogen you'll have in your body, and that increases your weight a lot more per calorie than fat does, so it'll mess with the results. So I'll pick a little period here. Let's take, I put in the, I didn't. There we go. So day 18, that's good. We'll start at 18 and we'll go, let's say, I'll just pick a point here, 34, 18 to 34. So we'll begin with summing all of the calories we've eaten. So use the sum command, quite simple, and then go from day 18 down to 34. There we go, it's quite a lot of calories. Label that. Now here's the difficult part for me. What I'll actually do is I'll count the days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So they're misleading. So that's 17 days. Now, what we want to do next is look at the weight. And we want to figure out the start weight and the end weight. That's what's important, nothing in between. So the start weight for this will be, it'll be the day after, so the 1st of December to the 17th of December. That's quite nice, that works out nicely. So we'll see 35 and 71, 73.5 and then 71.5, so that's 2 kilos. But weight fluctuates from day to day, so that's not exactly the best way to figure it out. And the best way to figure this out is to go 2 days before and 2 days after. So the 19th and the 28th of November. We'll just go there, or thereabouts. And then we will insert a graph. And what we want is to find something that's reasonable. So as you can see here, this little bump in my weight here is probably because of some glycogen for one reason or another. I don't know. So I won't go with 35. I'll go with maybe 73.2 or 73.3. We'll go with 73.2. Be conservative. So that is start weight, end weight. And we'll figure out if this is accurate in a bit. So here there's a big spike. That's awkward. But looking at the trend, I would estimate approximately, this is probably a bit too low, that's a bit too high, 71.5, 71.6. We'll be conservative, call it 71.6. If the number that it spits out is completely unrealistic, then you'll know that you got this wrong. But this should be good enough for the purposes that we're doing. What you can also use is you can use a chart like here, weighted 3-day average. So for this one, if we look at day 34, it's about, what is that, 71.3, and then day 18 is 73.3. So we're in that ballpark, and of course remember that was a dip in glycogen. I must have done some running or something on that day. Could not tell. Yeah, it's in the middle of 3 5K runs and going to the gym. So obviously my glycogen will be lower at that point. So I feel comfortable with those numbers. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how many calories of fat have I lost or gained. So in my case, it's lost. So what I'll do is I will subtract one from the other, quite simply like that. It keeps putting everything into Calibri. There we are. Now it'll look nicer. I'll also blow this up. And quite simply multiply how much weight you've lost or gained by 7,700. And if you're doing this in pounds, 3,492. Just call it 3,500. With this, what we're going to do is we will add what we lost to what we burnt, because this is about how much our body has burnt. So if we have lost weight equal to 12,320 calories, we add that to however much we ate for the deficit. If it were negative 12,000, so we gained the weight, add it again, because plus minus equals minus. So that's 50,000 calories burnt in 17 days. Goodness, I put 17 first. Divide that by 17. 2,950 calories, approximately. So that will tell you exactly how many calories you're burning. But what you've noticed, of course, is if we look at this period, which goes from here to there, there's a lot of running and there's also some gym. So this isn't my maintenance. This is how much I'm burning while I'm doing those activities. And it's why I was able to be in a deficit on about 22, 23, 2400 calories despite weighing not that much. Yeah. So I know from when I started this, I had already lost a bunch of kilos, so there wasn't any glycogen still in my body. If you have only just decided to go into a cut and you start measuring your weight from the get-go, there'll be a bunch of glycogen, which depending on how athletic you are, it'll be anywhere from 2 to 8% of your body weight in glycogen, which is quite a lot, or water weight as well, I should say. It's not all glycogen, but it can be quite a lot. Obviously, the reason you don't want to track that is because, let's say I lost 2 kilos of glycogen and 3 kilos of fat. Well, fat is 7,700 calories per kilo, but glycogen is 1,200. So I won't get this. What we care about is converting mass lost into calories. Now, what I should mention is some muscle will be lost in a cut. Some. Not necessarily, but sometimes some. Especially the more advanced you are at lifting, the more muscle will be lost. But the amount is so minute that I'm going to neglect it in these calculations. It would also be very impossible to account for. And also, it's extremely close to fat. So it's about, I think it's 5,900 calories per kilo. Not sure, but it's close. So that's how you'll figure out how many calories you're burning. You can do this over whatever time period you want. The more time you have, the more precise it'll be. But of course, it's up to you. Now that you know how to do this, you have the most important stepping stone of setting a diet. So if you want to bulk, you would take that number and add maybe 5, maybe 10%. If you want to cut, depending on when you want to achieve your goals, you'll set an appropriate amount depending on how many calories a day you want to burn for how much fat you want to lose per day. If you have watched this with the thought in your mind to go to the tracking macros video afterwards, I'll put it up at the end as well, right here. And that should have you covered for setting any kind of diet that you want. So good luck with that, and thank you for watching.